Hi, and welcome to CVC Interviews. My name is Joyce Vaudreuil from Vernon, and today I'm here talking with Lauren and Bob from the Lutz Museum. And so let's find out from Lauren and Bob what they do here, what they do at the Lutz Museum, and more about it. Lauren, what do you do at the Lutz Museum?
So my position at the Lutz Museum is the Educational Services Coordinator. So I'm the direct contact between the museum and schools and organizations and other community centers that want to have programs either hosted at the museum through field trips or through outreach lessons, so when we go to visit them in their building.
Excellent. We definitely need to talk more about that. Bob, and what do you do at the Lutz Museum?
I'm the executive director, which means that I do all the boring stuff. I'm the one who does the marketing and the finance and the human resources, and while that allows people like Lauren to go out and do educational programs with kids.
So how many people actually work at the museum?
It depends on who you count. We've got about a dozen people on our staff, and many of them are part-time. And a few of us are full-time, and we also have 140 active volunteers.
Wow.
And they range from young people, like teenagers who need credits for class or for religious education or something, to working professionals, like our lawyer volunteers her time, and we've got a plumber who volunteers time, to senior citizens, people who are retired, like retired teachers or any other skills that they want to contribute to the community and stay active.
So tell me a little bit about the Lutz Museum. I understand it is geared towards children, basically between the ages of 2 and 10.
Yep.
That's your focus.
Yep.
And what would someone expect to see there?
So the first thing I'm going to do is correct you on one thing.
What's that?
I always say Lutz Children's Museum because I think that's the most important word in our name. We are all about children, so I never abbreviate it. Because the children are central to everything we do.
Of course.
The museum has been around since the 1950s, and I think it's an interesting story. Hazel Lutz was a local school teacher, and she started to collect artifacts in the trunk of her car. So she traveled around to different schools teaching art, and she would always bring something into her classroom, because she was the kind of teacher who believed that kids learned best by doing something, not reading it in a book, but actually experiencing it firsthand.
I can appreciate that on many levels.
So this is the 1950s, though, so she was a teacher ahead of her time. So at first she brought artwork into her classroom, and then scientific and historical artifacts, and then she started to bring live animals into her classroom. So the collection grew, and eventually she went to her principal and said, I have too much to keep in the trunk of the car. Could I have a closet? And he said yes. And then she was back in a few weeks and said, closet's full. Can I have a whole classroom? And her principal said yes. And then she was back again and said, classroom's full. Can I have the whole basement of the school? Wow. And at that point, the PTA stepped in and provided some funding, and the museum was actually founded in the basement of Waddell Elementary School in 1953. So it was operated by Hazel Lutz and all of her teacher friends who were volunteers.
Wow.
We didn't have a single staff member until 1960. And eventually we spun off as a private nonprofit so that we could serve additional towns. Now we serve 29 different towns across central Connecticut.
And all of the towns that are serviced by CVC?
Absolutely,
Bolton.
yep.
Excellent.
All of those towns. Our service area goes all the way up to the Massachusetts border in the north, south to Middletown and Portland, west to Simsbury and Avon, and east to Storrs and Willimantic, because more than half of what we do takes place outside of our building. So a lot of people see what we have inside the building, don't know anything about what we do out in the community.
Which is one reason to be here. We want to get the word out to as many people as possible. I was intrigued by the teacher kits, which sounds like reminiscent of what she used to do originally. Can you tell me a little bit about the teacher kits? That's probably something you organize as the education coordinator.
So our teacher kits they're currently in the process of, we're kind of getting them back and reevaluating their needs and what teachers' needs and getting them back out in the community. But they were basically kits of various topics, so whether they were science-based or cultural-based that teachers could, or history-based that teachers could rent out. So it would include all the hands-on artifacts that they would need for the classroom, and it came along with suggested lessons that the kids could do and the activities that the kids would do, everything that they would need for a days or a span of days of activities learning about a specific topic.
Well, what's one of your favorite kits that you currently have?
So we have a bunch currently having to do with animals, because I love animals. So
Okay.
I've recently really gotten into teaching about insects, because I never really had an appreciation before coming into this job, and now having to teach kids about insects and what makes an insect unique in the thousands and thousands of different types of insects. Getting into how can we take so much information and break it down into a kit that can be usable in a classroom.
Oh, I see. Okay. And with the educational programs you folks have, I saw that you also do different types of events, and you have programs where both teachers and parents, is it? I saw you have classes that kids can take. Is that geared towards parents or to the teachers?
So we do a couple different sets of classes geared towards different demographics. So we have a set of programs geared towards preschoolers. We have a set of classes geared towards grade school classes, and then we have sets of classes that are geared for in the museum, that we teach at the museum.
At the museum.
So
Excellent.
we do in-house teaching, and we do a lot of outreach programs where we travel to different organizations.
So when someone's visiting, I think I was reading that you have a very nice deal for people to get a membership there. So the Lutz Children's Museum, it's only $100 for a family membership.
Right.
Well, what's included in that?
There's two things we really need to talk about. One is the things that happen inside the museum, and then all the things that happen outside the museum. But when visitors come to the museum, we're a nonprofit organization,
Yes.
so we try to make everything available to the community at a reasonable cost. So some people will be asked to pay admission when they come to the museum, and that'll include everything we're doing that day, including classes. So you can take a free class while you're there. So there's two ways that you can get into the museum. You either pay admission at the door or you become a member. And of course, I think a membership's a better deal. We have a Lutz-only membership, which gives you unlimited free admission at the museum, our museum. But for only a few dollars more, you get a reciprocal membership. We belong to two different national organizations, the Association of Children's Museums, and that's every children's museum in the United States and Canada, basically.
Wow.
And then also the Association of Science and Technology Centers. So wherever you go, you'll get free or half-priced admission. So across Connecticut, there are dozens, but then if you're in Boston or New York or Dallas or San Francisco, you can find a place and probably get in for free with your Lutz Children's Museum membership card.
That is definitely a benefit worth mentioning. I was just looking at the entrance fee, and if you only go a few times, it's well worth it.
Absolutely. We see some people who are there almost every day. Some people come in just when there's a class going on. Or even if you're only going to be here a few times, but you travel a lot and you want to visit a lot of museums, it's a great investment. Good gift, too, a birthday present, a holiday gift give to a friend, a neighbor, a member of your family.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a very good idea. So you wanted to talk more about the
outreach services,
programs?
I think, are important.
Sure.
So, as I said, more than half what we do takes place outside the building. So I often call it a big museum in a little building. So we are in 3 different buildings. We have our primary building is the former South School. It's on South Main Street in Manchester. Okay. If you haven't been there, it's I-384 to exit 3, which is downtown Manchester. And you turn towards Glastonbury near the country club. And it's an old school house, and we've converted all of the spaces inside the museum to galleries and with hands-on play. We have one big room where we have classes and concerts and programs, and then one is filled with live animals. I know you're going to want to talk about the animals.
Oh, yes, very much so.
And then we also have the Oak Grove Nature Center. We operate 52 acres of land. It's about a mile away from the museum. And there we do outdoor education, and it's a beautiful property with trails and a covered bridge and a pond. And the goal there is to get kids outside, turning over a log or wading into the water and taking a water sample and doing real life science. But it's important to get kids outside and get them learning and getting dirty.
What is the age range that your programs are geared towards? Did I see it was generally elementary school, and so you want teachers to come and check it out? And
Our mission is children 2 to 10.
2 to 10.
But it includes also their family members and their schools. So
Wow.
we tend to incorporate every member of the family and every member of the school community.
Excellent.
Most of our staff is on the road, so they go and visit schools and libraries and community centers in all of those towns that we serve.
Wow.
Lauren's one of our outreach educators, and she does science and nature programming. But we also have people who do history programming, travel in period costume, and might recreate the classroom of 1850. We also do fine and performing arts. So they may come with art supplies and teach you about a famous artist, or work in a specific medium, or maybe a musician or an actor to come and do a program in your school. Also do a lot of after-school programs.
Excellent. You do have a wonderful webpage with a lot of this information. What I would like to talk about, you mentioned the animals, and you have some animals here. So maybe what we can do is, when we come back after a quick break, we're going to have some other guests here that we haven't introduced you to. So please stay tuned.
At the Connecticut River Academy at Goodwin College, we believe students should be prepared academically and socially for college, laying an important foundation for future success. Our early college model allows the opportunity to earn up to 30 college credits at no tuition cost. Students enjoy a curriculum filled with hands-on learning and discovery, inside and outside the classroom. To learn more about the Connecticut River Academy, visit goodwin.edu/magnetschools.
Hi, welcome back. Here with CVC interviews, and Bob and Lauren are from the Lutz Children's Museum. And while we were on break, Lauren is here to introduce our new guest. Lauren, who do you have here?
So I have here, this is Blue, and he's one of our residents at the museum, one of our permanent residents, and he is a blue-tongued skink. So he'll probably stick it out, but if we can see, he's got a nice blue tongue that gives him that name.
Does he just hang out at the museum all day, or?
So, yes and no. The museum is his home, so he's there all night and sometimes during the day. But we have a good amount of animals that travel. So we'll take them out on a daily basis in the museum to meet the museum guests who are coming in, patrons that are coming into the museum, as a meet and greet of an animal in the gallery. So we'll take out various animals. Sometimes kids can come into the animal room and pick out an animal that they want to see. But we'll take them out and we'll take them around the museum so the kids can pet them, learn their name, learn some species facts. And then we also take them outside of the museum on our outreach program. So they'll get to meet students that don't come to the museum, but...
So what would you do if this was an outreach program and you were at an elementary school? What's something you would do, like make sure you point out about meeting Blue here?
So a lot of our programs, especially our animal-based science programs, have a lot of artifacts involved. So everything that we do in these programs are hands-on. So we take out an artifact, we teach the kids about an artifact, but then we pass it to them. So they get to hold it, they get to feel it, they get to smell it if they want, feel the textures, hold it in their own hand, and then they pass it to the friend next to them. But at the end of those programs, to end the programs, we take out a live animal related to the topic that we were studying. So say we were learning about reptiles or dry desert biomes, we would take out an animal related to that and say, you know, we learned a couple of different animals that lived in this area. Let's meet a real one.
Excellent.
So we would take out Blue, for instance, and we would start off by saying, Blue's a blue-tongued skink. We'd say what the animal is, and, he's a reptile. We might go into what makes a reptile a reptile. So he's got very hard scales that cover his body. Right, that's the characteristic of a reptile.
Yes.
A lot of times to end, we'll have the kids pet the animal. And, we ask them, they're very surprised that they've got hard scales on the top and then soft scales on the bottom.
Yes.
But we go around and we say, what do you see? What can you observe about Blue? And they might say, oh, he's got these weird holes in the side of his head. What are those? And you say, well, those are his ears. You might say he's got weird stubby legs, and those are characteristics of reptiles, that they've got really bowed, bent legs for sprawled legs for walking and digging. Then we might go into how wild animals differed from the captive animals that we have at the museum. So we try and relate everything back to Connecticut. So we might say a blue-tongued skink isn't a type of skink that we find in Connecticut, but we find the 5-lined skink in Connecticut.
Oh.
Which they're smaller, they're darker, and they've got a very vibrant blue tail. So it's kind of perhaps showing a picture of the 5-lined skink and showing how they look the same but look different at the same time. And then the kids can pet them.
So, Bob, we were talking about that you have a lot of animals at the Lutz Children's Museum. Maybe you can tell us more about the ones that live there while, Lauren, can you bring out our other guests while Bob tells us about that?
Absolutely. We have about 75 different animals that live at the museum. And, our mission really isn't animals. Our mission is education.
Yes.
So everything we do has an educational mission. Children in general, but particularly children at risk in schools that don't have a lot of resources need these opportunities because it helps them to develop their vocabulary and their understanding of the world around them. So that really is our mission. The animals are just an avenue, a vehicle to help us to teach kids. There are about 75 different animals at the museum. Some of them are wild animals that were injured. These are animals that can't survive in the wild anymore. Any animal that can be released is released. The animals that are at the museum had severe injuries, and a veterinarian decided that they couldn't survive in the wild and they depend on humans. But they have a really good life at the museum. They get a job, they teach kids, but they also have a good quality of life. We have an enrichment plan for every animal, which means different toys, different activities, interactions with humans who care about them. They have a great diet. They're visited regularly by their veterinarian from Bolton Veterinary Hospital. So the animals at the museum are very well treated. Some are domesticated animals, animals that somebody might have had as a pet, but couldn't keep or wasn't well cared for, and they came to the museum for a second life in education.
Well, it's great because you're helping out animals that people should not have as pets, most of the animals you have there. But the ones that do wind up there are being, they have affection, they get, great food. Your veterinarian works with you on diets for all of them. So I do think they have a wonderful life, and I have experience with organizations like yours. So I'm looking forward to seeing yours. Lauren, you have a new friend here. Who is this?
I have a new friend that's getting a little restless now. But this is Petunia.
Oh.
And she's one of our chinchillas. She's a standard domestic chinchilla. So she was one of those instances where she was a part of a family and they no longer wanted her. So then we adopted her, and now we're her permanent home at the museum. But she's just another example of a type of animal that we would take to a program. So a lot of our programs we have a lot of different topics in our programs, but a lot of them we like to talk about adaptations. So we've got a couple programs that talk about animal defenses, whether it's they've got spikes or claws or they just camouflage. So Petunia here, she's one of our animals that we take out on these defenses and adaptations programs. And we talk about how, well, she's cute and fluffy, what can she do to protect herself? And we talk about, well, she's gray and she's small, So she would be really good at camouflaging.
Oh.
So we would tell the kids, a little bit of species facts, so where she comes from, and she would come from the Andes mountain range down in South America. So a little
Wow.
far.
Yeah, very far from home.
And we would tell them what her habitat is like. So she loves, wild chinchillas would love, rocky outcrops, crevices, tall places where they can scurry and jump, and little holes where they can hide. So we would say, well, a domestic chinchilla doesn't need a reason to hide. She doesn't have any predators at the museum. But wild chinchillas, how would they use their bodies to do that? And their fur helps them camouflage by being there's gray, they can be black, beige, hiding out in rocks.
Mm-hmm.
They've got big ears for hearing predators that might be able to come. And that they're nocturnal. So they might have opposite sleep schedules from predators. So they've got
Oh,
these
that's
big,
why
big
big
whiskers.
eyes. Big eyes and big whiskers.
Yeah, they've got big, big whiskers to help them sense their environment in the dark. They've got big eyes to help them see in the dark. They've got big ears to hear. And then their big ears, if you look really close, doesn't really have much hair on them. They've got little tiny hairs, but it's just skin. There's not much covering it. And that helps her regulate her body temperature.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, she has a fur coat on under these hot lights right now, so.
She's got, it's not very long fur, but it's very, very thick. It's
Oh.
very dense. So one of the things that we tell kids is that one of the more fun facts that we tell kids is chinchillas can never really take a bath. We can't really get her wet. Because if she gets too wet, she can't dry herself off.
Oh.
She can't naturally dry. She's exploring. That little nose is going.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, now Bob was going to hold this one.
Yeah.
So with the chinchillas, this particular animal, Petunia, she's somebody that's here all the time, but you have rotating animals. So if an animal's under rehab, they might be there at the Lutz Museum Children's Museum for what? Till they're decided by the vet that, oh, this animal's healthy enough, and you have a release. Is that something that you actually do the release through your programs?
We actually don't. So we don't do any wildlife rehabilitation at the museum.
At the museum, okay.
We're not licensed to. We don't have a staff member who's has a permit to do wildlife rehabilitation. So any animal that has been rehabilitated, can find a home at the museum. We just don't do that process itself.
Oh,
at the
okay.
museum.
Yeah, that does sound like it'd be a lot more involved. Now,
We should mention that because we get a lot of calls from people who want us to take an animal, and we should tell you what the process is for that.
Okay.
We take referrals from veterinarians and from licensed rehabbers. So people will call and say, I found an animal in my yard. We'll do our best to give them advice or give them resources to contact. But when it comes to accepting an animal, we want them checked out by a professional first.
Sure.
So we'll tell them to contact a veterinarian or a rehabber, and then those people will contact us if they deem it to be unreleasable.
Yeah, you did mention the Bolton Veterinary. You also do something. What do you do? You do it around Memorial Day weekend, or?
I think you're talking about Farm Day.
Oh, Farm Day, yes.
Which is our biggest fundraiser of the year. It's held on the Fish Family Farm in Bolton. And as I said, everything we do has an educational mission. So
Yeah.
it's really a fun day out. It's a fun day on the farm, and it's all the ice cream you can eat. And there are live music all day, and hay rides, and barn tours, and games, and lots of fun things to do. But one of the reasons we do it is just so that kids have the experience of being on a farm for a day and seeing the animals and learning something about how milk is produced. So that's Labor Day weekend every year. We get thousands of people who come to Bolton, maybe for their first time, so it's a great experience to see how beautiful Bolton is.
It is, yes.
And all the funds that are raised help to support the educational outreach programming that the museum does in the community.
Yeah, I'm just amazed at how many different things you do. I'm sure there are people in our audience that would like to help. What are some of the ways that someone could help out if they wanted to, if they had a lot of money or not a lot of money.
We like both of those people.
Of course.
We are a nonprofit and we do rely on charitable contributions, so people can give us a donation or maybe remember us in their will is a way to support the museum. But they also can come and volunteer. All different kinds of people with all different kinds of skills are invited. Maybe they want to work with animals, that's great, but we also have people who are classroom volunteers. We have people who like to build and repair things, people who want to work on trails at the nature center. Really, whatever your interests are, we need your help.
So if someone goes onto the webpage, there's a place I saw there for volunteering, for donations, for membership. I mean, I think that family membership is just a wonderful deal. Someone can help out the organization, but also give an activity that, you know, is priceless. Having your children, your grandchildren, nieces, nephews playing with animals. I certainly did that with my nephews growing up. The youngest one is 18 now, so I won't be able to go there. But I do remember I love to bring them to places like that, hands-on, learning more about your community, the animals that are where you live too.
You know, I often argue that you don't outgrow the Lutz Children's Museum. We serve children 2 to 10 years old, so that's our core.
Yes.
But then they just get a little bit older and they become teenage volunteers. So they volunteer, and then we often write their college recommendations. A lot of times their experience at the museum leads them on a path towards their career. So maybe they come back as a college intern and work at the museum. And then some of our college interns we hire as our staff, so then they stay. And then after that, maybe they have their own children and they come back again with their own children. And then before long, you're a grandma or a grandpa and you're back with your grandchildren. So the museum is part of the community for everybody, no matter how young or how old you are.
Sounds wonderful. Sounds wonderful. So you, speaking of being there as a teenager, so you started there as a teenager.
I did. I had a friend who was a teenage volunteer, and he asked me if I would come and help clean animal cages one day when I was about 14.
And you said, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I did, and it was a great experience. The museum curators were my mentors, and I learned a lot at the museum. And then about 25 years later, I came back as a volunteer, and they asked if I might be interested in being the director. And it's been just a great opportunity to be engaged with the museum and the community and work with some very talented people.
So I'd like to thank you both for coming. I have been so informed. Your webpage is wonderful. It's got great information on it. Thank you so much for bringing Blue and Petunia. Appreciate
Can I just
it.
share that website with people in case
Please
they want
do.
to find us? So the museum itself is at 247 South Main Street in Manchester. Our telephone number is 643-0949. And our website is www.lutzmuseum.org.
Excellent. You also have a Facebook page. So
We do a very active Facebook page, so you can find us at Lutz Museum on Facebook and Twitter.
Oh, excellent. We're also on Facebook, so I want to make sure that everybody knows the webpage. And thank you again for joining us at CVC Interviews. My name is Joyce Vaudreuil from Vernon.